Welcome to Coffee with Viking. I am Mike. Cheers. Now we're starting session 4, which is courage. The key idea: courage believes not only that God is bigger than the opposition, but also better than all alternatives. And courage is not the lack of fear at all. A lot of people think if you're courageous, you're fearless. That is the furthest thing from the truth, because that means you wouldn't be courageous, you'd be fearless. Courage means you're afraid, but you're overcoming that fear by going towards it heads on. Like if you're afraid to do something, but you do it anyway, it's because you got the courage to do it. So courage and fearless are not the same thing, and a lot of people get that confused. Study 1. So part 1, convictional courage. It's telling us to jump into Daniel chapter 3, verses 1 through 12. Nebuchadnezzar the king made an image of gold whose height was 60 cubits, and the breadth thereof 6 cubits. He set it up in the plain of Dura, in the province of Babylon. Then Nebuchadnezzar the king sent to gather together the princes, the governors, and the captains, the judges, the treasurers, the counselors, the sheriffs, and all the rulers of the provinces to come to the dedication of the image which Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. Then the princes, the governors, the captains, the judges, the treasurers, the counselors, the sheriffs, and all the rulers of the provinces were gathered together unto the dedication of the image that Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. And they stood before the image that Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Then an herald cried aloud, To you it is commanded, O people, nations, and languages, that at what time ye hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, dulcimer, I don't even know how to say that, and all kinds of music, ye fall down and worship the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar the king has set up. And whoso falleth not down and worshipeth shall the same hour be cast into the midst of a burning fiery furnace. Therefore at that time, when all the people heard the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, and all kinds of music, all the people, the nations, and the languages fell down and worshipped the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. Wherefore at that time certain Chaldeans came near and accused the Jews. They spake and said to the king Nebuchadnezzar, O king, live forever. Thou, O king, hast made a decree that every man that shall hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, and dulcimer, and all kinds of music, shall fall down and worship the golden image. And whoso falleth not down and worshipeth, that he should be cast into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. There are certain Jews whom thou hast set over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, have not regarded thee. They serve not thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. In chapter 3, we see Nebuchadnezzar hadn't learned much. God revealed in a dream about a giant statue, no less, to Nebuchadnezzar that his kingdom was fleeting and temporary compared to God's kingdom that will last forever and crush all competitors. After that, the king had a giant gold statue built in his honor and commanded people of every nation and language to bow down and worship him. This was all going pretty well for him until 3 Hebrew teenagers had the courage to reject the king's commands. The central conviction of Christian courage is Jesus is Lord, which is why when we are afraid, we still go and do what God commands us to do. What convictions led Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to reject the king's orders? And how do your convictions shape where to take a stand? It wasn't the men's faith in God that caused the problem. It was their refusal to also acknowledge the divine authority of Nebuchadnezzar. Nothing has changed today in our Babylon. Faith in Jesus is not the problem. It is our insistence that he's the only way to salvation and only source of authority. You will never get in trouble for saying Jesus is your personal Savior, but you will when you say that there is no other name under heaven given to people by which we must be saved. Acts 4:12. Neither is there salvation in any other, for there is none other name under heaven given among men whereby we must be saved. And that alone sets the rules about what is right and wrong about sex, marriage, morality, and money. List some of the idols our Babylon expects men to bow down and to worship. We already know money is a big one. Politics is another big one. And it doesn't matter what side you're on there. But the biggest one is bowing down to the alphabet soup group and abortion, killing unborn babies. So if we disagree and we're pro-life, if we're pro-gun, that is something that goes against our own Babylon. And if we're pro-Bible, that is very much against. But the biggest one that can get us in trouble is standing up against the alphabet soup group. You say anything about the LGBT, XYZ, whatever, you're going to be in a lot of trouble because, they are well protected by the darkness of this world. So I would say that's the list of the idols that are worshipped now. And another big one is celebrities, of course. What does the supremacy of Jesus Why does the supremacy of Jesus threaten these culture idols? Because he stands against them. He doesn't stand against, money. It's the love of money. I'm sure he doesn't stand against a political leader who actually wants to do the right thing. It's the ones that worship the power, the money, and are corrupt. And of course, we don't even have to go into detail about the abortion and the alphabet soup group. But, God is a threat to them because he's against all that, because he will not allow sin into his kingdom. Every culture and society has its own idols, and the moment you fail to bow down in homage to the fiery furnace awaits. It's the same old spirit of Nebuchadnezzar. Every time in the Smithsonian Museum of Washington, D.C., there's a Bible that belongs to Thomas Jefferson with large passages cut out of it. In Jefferson's day, the academy world had turned against any kind of belief in miracles that was considered unfashionable, uneducated. These Enlightenment thinkers thought the morality of Jesus was awesome, and it still is today because God has never changed. The Sermon on the Mount was the greatest moral treatise in human history, but the miracles were a leftover relic of a superstitious past. If people did this today, they would probably cut out Jesus' teachings on the sanctity of sex and marriage. They'd kept the miracle stories and cut out large parts of the Sermon on the Mount. Babylon says it is fine to worship Jesus, just edit him to find our preference so you can still bow where you need to bow. But hear me, for the follower of Jesus, that's not an option. He's either Lord or he is not. For us to not make that clear, is it not just cowardly? It is not just cowardly, it is cruel. Why is it cruel to be quiet or complacent about Jesus' lordship? Well, it's cruel because when we let fear take over and we don't let anyone know about all the things Jesus did, especially on the cross, then we're actually as guilty as they are about them going to hell, about their choice to go to hell, because we chose not to let them know that there is another way. We are just as guilty by keeping our mouth shut. Why do Christian men bear a particular responsibility to stand on the courage of their convictions about Jesus? Because as a man, especially as a Christian man, a follower of Christ, we are to lead by our examples, and our example comes from Christ. Even if the world hates us for where we stand and who we follow, we must be that example as Christ was to us. These young men understood the call of Jesus and the courage it requires, because these guys stood when everyone else bowed, even though they got thrown into a fiery furnace for it. An entire empire saw the reality of the God of Israel on display. Scholars say you can trace the faith of the wise men who came to see Jesus at his birth back to this encounter. What will future generations say about the courage of the testimony of our generation? If there is a future, if the second coming doesn't hit, I don't even want to know what future generations would say. This entire future depends on our courage in the present. Jesus, give me the courage to bow down to nothing but you. Stay blessed. Stay caffeinated. Staying strong in the Lord. Much love.